I love Crucial Conversations. I'm a huge fan, but for those who are just entering the space, what would be a quick summary of the Crucial Conversations series, and what do you consider to be the crucial skills that someone develops?
Perfect, that's a really good question. So one of the things we've learned over 3 decades plus of research is that there are certain moments that we call them crucial moments that are moments of disproportionate influence. Meaning if you can learn to navigate those moments, they can have a greater impact on the results and outcomes that you're seeking. And so how do you step up to those moments when 3 things collide? High stakes. We all live in some pretty high stakes situations. What do you do when high stakes, differing opinions, and strong emotions come together?
Oh yeah.
That is what we call a crucial moment.
I love how you distilled that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how, when you confront that, and that's the challenge, right? We all have things that we're passionate about, and it seems like when things matter the most, we're at our worst, right? Because emotions take over. And so some of the crucial skills are all about how do you, number one, control those emotions? How do you bring your very best self into a space where there can be healthy dialogue, where it's not just me sharing, it's you sharing. It's about how do you create, to me, I always say Crucial Conversations is inclusion at its finest. Because it's about how do you get everyone's point of view. Inclusion is more than just representation. It's about like insight and ideas. And so to me, the Crucial Conversations courses teach you those necessary skills to be persuasive but not abrasive, to be able to step up and speak up to those things that are really, really difficult, to help us overcome our own natural tendencies, not personalities, but we all have our style under stress, right? When emotion kicks in, we either run away from dialogue or we confront it with too much abrasive, right? And too much emotion.
That's really beautiful. I feel like some really seasoned executives out there probably get tons of experience doing this on a daily basis. But what are just a few, I'm not going to say tips and tricks, but just some words of advice for if people want to get started being better at Crucial Conversations today?
You know, it's funny because we have different ways in which we deliver our course. We have, of course, our in-person training, which is a 2-day deep dive. We can do it virtually, which is a 2.5 hour sessions, or we can do an on-demand self-paced course, right? But oftentimes I come to conferences like this, and like tomorrow, I'm going to have 60 minutes to speak. How do you take 2 days worth of content? So whenever someone says, what's one thing? If there's just one thing you could tell me, what would it be? And that would be to master our stories. You see, what happens is when we see something, we have what's called a path to action. I see something, I hear it, I then tell myself a story about what that means. We interpret it. That story brings a really strong emotion, and then we act upon it. And so if we can learn to get behind those stories and focus on what we really see and not get caught up in our heads, and which create those emotions. You know, one of our authors and founders, Joseph Grinning, always says, if you want to change your results, you've got to change your emotions. If you want to change your emotions, you have to change your stories. And so I try not to be that parent or spouse that's constantly using their Crucial Conversation skills on my family. But one thing they hear me say all the time, that's a story.
I love that. And it seems like there's a strong metacognitive aspect to this, that like this idea of being very self-aware of how you're feeling, being able to articulate your own emotions, and being able to tell when you're starting down a process or a sort of a path that you've gone many times before, and being able to stop yourself in tracks and that kind of thing. Do you think metacognition is important?
There's obviously, I think what you just said, self-awareness. One of the things I say all the time is that awareness brings choice. When I'm aware, when I'm mindful of not just only how I behave, but how other people, if I can learn to recognize when we're having a conversation, all of a sudden, it just turned crucial. Like all of a sudden, I'm noticing that your behaviors, either you're retreating or you're becoming a little more aggressive. That puts me back in the driver's seat. And I always like to say, he who notices first wins. Whether that be me noticing my own tendencies or noticing the tendencies of others, there's no doubt. Our courses begin by talking about what do we do about ourselves, because dialogue begins with me, but it also has to have you. And so I have to bring my very best self, because then I can truly focus on what's most important, your meaning. If I can share my meaning in a way that encourages you to do the same, that's a victory.
It does seem like there's this whole body aspect of communication involved in all this, like reading the other person and then being also really attuned to how you're using your own gestures and facial expression and posture and things like that. What do you think this means translated into Zoom? We've heard all this stuff about Zoom fatigue and how you communicate via Zoom. Any thoughts about having these kinds of conversations in a remote context?
Yeah, the good news is, number one, that skills translate, right? I always like to say virtual behaves exactly the same as in person, just a little different, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that it's true, though. As a matter of fact, it's what I'm speaking on tomorrow. Distance destroys dialogue, right? Because there's so many things that get in the way. We're minimizing a lot of communication when we communicate virtually. So it's important that we keep the right environment. Webcams are so important that we see each other, particularly when we're having crucial conversations. If it's just a team check-in, that maybe not as important. But if I have to step up to a pretty difficult conversation and I have to talk to you about it, I want to be able to see it. I want to be able to read it, right? But I think there are some ways where I always like to say, how do you learn to look when you can't see? And there are ways that you can do that. Think about communicating even an email in that matter. If I send a message and I don't get an email back, that's silence. They've never not responded. So I may be able to respond with an email that says, hey, I'm not sure how to interpret the fact that you haven't responded. How do you feel about the proposal? Or maybe I'm sending a direct message and I'm not sure how to read your post that you put to my message.
Right.
I feel like you're upset. Are you? So sometimes I've got to. We call it priming, right? When you prime the pump, you put water in the pump so you can get water out of the pump. Sometimes you've got to prime to get something out. I got to throw it out there and say, is it this? Right? Is this what's going on?
Yes.
Help me understand. But I think one of the crucial skills of being able to create dialogue is our ability to listen, our ability to look and observe, and our ability to create safety for people to share those things.
Yes. So I have to ask this question. What do you think about our current remote work situation? Is it going to be hybrid at scale, and for how long? Is this a reality for the indefinite future?
It really seems that way. We work with a lot of different organizations. We work with big organizations, small organizations, and there are those who are, obviously we see some of the big names that are moving their employees back into the office and what that means for people. I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that we can be productive in multiple environments. And I think one of the things that we've noticed in our research about effectiveness and success is it's not about location, it's about leadership. Right?
It's about leadership.
If leaders can know how to create cultures of dialogue, whether it be completely remote, whether that be hybrid, it really isn't about location, it's about leadership. And I think that's one of the things that we're truly vested in, is how do we help leaders be better of creating cultures of dialogue, cultures of safety, because there are things that you can do even amidst our current state, although there are going to be challenges. There will be difficulties. Obviously, we talk about proximity bias and things like I remember the days when my cousins lived right next to Grandma and Grandpa. They got tons more things than we did. But then guess what? They moved, Grandma and Grandpa moved by us. Proximity bias. We got all the cool things, right? So I think if you're aware, awareness brings choice, and we create a culture where we can step up and speak up when we notice those things, then we can overcome them. There will always be realities. We can't completely do away with proximity bias. And in some cases, you can't even fault people. They're right here. I see them all the time,
That's
right?
True.
How do we create the right cultures? Again, it's not about location, it's about leadership.
As they say, people don't leave companies, they leave their bosses.
True, absolutely. The manager effect is real, right? And that's why it's so important that our managers are learning these critical skills, right? And we've learned over lots of research as well that probably one of the most telling signs of an effective leader is their ability to communicate, their ability to have these kind of conversations. Most of them can't, and they don't know how. And I think one of the challenges is that we often within our organizations say we have a culture of dialogue. We invite people. We want you to speak up, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but if I don't know how to do it, it doesn't matter if you want me to.
Or you never were asked.
Yeah.
Or there's no forum.
I don't know how to do it in a way because we make what's called a fool's choice.
Yes.
We made that decision long ago that we kind of come to the conclusion that we can't be candid and kind. I can't tell the truth.
That's what the radical candor is all about.
We can't. The challenge is, how do we step up and be real, but still be respectful, right? I think the challenge, we think that if I can't be honest, then I'm gonna hurt their feelings.
Right.
It's not so much the riskiness of the message, it's how safe you can help people feel in hearing that message.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
I should have gotten a bigger mask, by the way. This is fun. I apologize.
And last question. There is a groundswell of interest and an emphasis on inclusion and well-being at work. Do you see this continuing, this arc continuing its upward swing in your estimation?
Absolutely. And I think there's been a lot of celebrities, people who have drawn attention to the importance of mental health. And you see that Nike just shut down their offices for a week to give their employees a chance to regain themselves. I think it's really important. It's really important because now that we live in a remote/hybrid world, I noticed in myself even, I've been completely remote for the last couple of years. It's easy to not disconnect. It's to stay focused, to stay locked in. And I think we have to make sure we're doing our part. When you think about a work from home model, again, it's not about location, it's about leadership. And one of the things is we've recently did a study where we found that when leaders are actively striving to build a culture to adapt to this work from home, are seeing increases in engagement and customer satisfaction and retention. And so I think, this will be continued. Right? We're going to be in this place, and we have to create a culture. And what's interesting, one of the key things we found, surprisingly from us, right, is that one of the key contributors to building that engagement and connection via a remote setting is training. When you invest in your people virtually even, number one, not only is it teaching them skills that they need, but it's giving them the opportunity to connect in different ways. We miss the days. We've lost trust. If I am traveling, think about this. When you go into the office, we have those little moments when we come to the office together at the same time. Oh, and I have a little discussion with you. Or I see you in the microwave warming up your, and we build trust. Or even those awkward conversations we have in the bathroom. Build trust. Now, if I want to reach out to you via Zoom, it's usually going, there's an issue.
You're right.
And now suddenly,
you gotta build
there's no trust there. It's like I don't get to, I don't just Zoom you and say, hey, Christina, just thought I'd see what are you having for lunch today. No, when I say, hey, do you have a minute we can talk? Can I Zoom you? And all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, what am I doing? And so suddenly the formality of that interaction has made something bigger when we're trying to make it safer to talk about things that matter.
That's so interesting. The negative connotations and the idea that
so you have to, so in this hybrid state, successful organizations will have to find ways for them to connect with each other even virtually. And there are a lot of strategies. Training obviously is one of them, but just creating fun virtual moments. There's lots of different things that you can do to help build that connection, because I think from what we're seeing amongst all the organizations we work with, it's not going away.
This is the new normal. This is
what does normal even mean anymore? I've lost I don't even look that up in the dictionary. I don't think normal means the same thing anymore, right? Normal means change.
Exactly.
One of the questions you'd asked, it was on there that I didn't know I'd feel like I'd be the right person to answer, was just the trends. And probably one of the biggest trends I'm seeing is technology. Right?
Yes.
And how do we make it? And you look at someplace like a class that is trying to make Zoom, which was designed as a collaboration tool, not a training tool, to adapt it to a training, learning environment. So, well, awesome. Christina, thank you so much.